So we'll start with coming back to the bell and our breath. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know that I'm breathing out. In, out. Breathing in, I follow the full length of my in-breath from beginning to end. And breathing out, I follow the continuation of the in-breath to the out-breath from beginning to the end. Following the breathing, the cycle of breath. And breathing in, I come in contact with my whole body sitting in this moment. The sensations, the contact where I'm sitting, the movement of the breath, any sensations on my skin or inside my body. And breathing out, I allow my body and the functions of my body to calm, to ease naturally. Aware of whole body, calming body. And as I continue to follow my in and out breath as an anchor for my attention, I bring to mind a place that is a place of refuge for me, a place of maybe rest, rejuvenation, or inspiration, a place that we would call a part of our home, our spiritual home, our path. Coming in contact with a place, a spiritual home, smiling to this place that is available as a refuge for us. Getting the nourishment, the support, the reassurance of this place, even in this present moment, wherever we are. And continuing to follow the natural rhythm of my breath. I come in contact with an activity, a context in which I get inspiration, nourishment, and support on my path. Coming in contact with ingredients and activities on my path. Smiling, receiving the nourishment. Allowing ourselves to receive the nourishment and the support of these activities in the present moment. And with the cycles of the breath as it comes and goes in the body, as an anchor, I bring to mind people that are part of my path, that are inspiring me, that are supporting me, that are my friends on the path, maybe my community. aware of the people inspiring and supporting our path, our transformation and healing, receiving their presence and nourishment in this present moment, smiling. Inviting these people who are a part of our path, whether they are still alive, if they're present with us, if they're far away or continued, can invite them to be here to nourish us, to support us in this present moment. So when we're ready, we can move our bodies a little bit, open our eyes. We come to the end of this guided meditation, this beautiful day.
Thank you, brother. So good to start off this way. I needed that. It's been a morning filled with activity for me. That was really good. All right. So I want to start this out by telling an anecdote of how I met you. Because this is really fun, and I don't think you know this. Yeah. So here's the thing. A couple years ago, I get invited by a doctor to come to Jacksonville, Florida, to give a workshop. Right? So she tells me, "Yeah, I'm gonna gather a few people, and then you can do the workshop. And I love what you do. I love your work, and blah blah blah." So I'm like, "Sure, I'll come." So the day before I'm coming, she's like, "Oh, by the way, you're staying in my beach house, but you're sharing the house with two other people." I'm like, "Sure." They're two monks, and they're gonna be joining the workshop. And I'm like, "Oh," because the workshop has a lot to do with spiritual development and inner work, and it's got a basis of mindfulness. And I'm like, why are two monks going to join my workshop? So that scares the heck out of me. Thankfully, I did not know who Brother Phap Ho was, right? So she just told me there were two monks and they were going to join. So I get there, I get to meet Brother Phap Ho and the other monk, the younger monk. What was his name? I can't remember his name right now.
Brother Generosity.
Yes. Yeah. I got to meet both of them. They're amazing people. And then I get to do a workshop. When I'm doing the workshop, at the beginning, I'm really nervous, but then I get to know them and they're really sweet. They're beautiful human beings. And they really fast, they make me feel comfortable with them and with what I'm sharing. So we have a beautiful time, and then we get to connect on a personal level later on. So what I was saying is, I did not know. Thankfully, I did not know who Brother Phap Ho was at that time, because that would have been really intimidating. It was already intimidating, but that would have been more intimidating because um, Brother Phap Ho, well, he's from Sweden. He started meditating while at the university, and in 2001 he took a sabbatical and traveled to India, where he came in touch with Buddhist teachings and meditation, including Thich Nhat Hanh, or his books. And in 2003 he decided to be ordained as a novice monk in Plum Village under Thich Nhat Hanh's tradition, right? And then in 2010 he received a teacher lamp from his teacher, and has been residing since 2006 in Deer Park Monastery, right? What he does not say is that he's been an abbot for Deer Park Monastery for quite a while now, right? What is it, about 10 years?
Yeah, 9+.
Yeah. Um, so yes, I would have been really intimidated if I know who you were at that moment. But that was even though he's got this beautiful and amazing credentials and story and all this knowledge, he would really allowed me to feel really comfortable with him is and what the bio doesn't say is he's got this huge heart and great humility, and I am honored to share this space with you because you're an amazing human being, um, and I think a lot of people need to get to know you better. So thank you again. um, the reason why I was there is because I am a business major. I studied business. I have a master's degree in business and with a specialization in family business and entrepreneurship. But I also started meditating when I was 7 years old. My mom got me into meditation when I was a kid, and she got me into spiritual life. And we'll talk about what spiritual life means when I was a kid. The thing is, one of the things that my mom taught me when I was a kid, she told me, I'm going to teach you how to meditate, but you can't tell anyone. Right? You got to keep it a secret, right? And this is because at that moment, Costa Rica was a very Catholic country, and she was afraid, and she actually told me this. I'm afraid that people will either deem you as crazy and reject you, or think that I, as a mother, I'm crazy and I'm misdirecting you and will take you away from me, right? So meditation and spiritual practice became for me my secret life up until about 12 or 13 years ago. Um, so the last 6 years have been about coming out for me and sharing more of my personal knowledge and my spiritual life, which had always been in secret, right? So yeah, when I come and I'm sharing the work that I do and the model that I use, and I'm sharing it with monks, it becomes it became really intimidating. But I want to thank you for being just your sweet, beautiful being that you are. So, Father Phap Ho, what does the spiritual life mean to you? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think is when I touch it the most clearly and vividly is actually also coming back to childhood, the moments in childhood where just there was this wonderment, this awe of life, a sense of feeling deeply connected with things, not anyone or anything in particular, just everything. And these moments in nature where I could have these experiences maybe most often, I was just feeling like, things make sense even in the complicated, confusing world that we've organized for ourselves. So I think that is coming back to that in different ways is a spiritual life, and it can take many shapes and forms. I think also an important aspect, and what I've had to practice even more with the last couple of years is also that of seeing challenges and suffering as a teacher, and how can we learn and grow with those challenges if we have enough tools and enough capacity. We can use the most difficult things as actually sources of awakening, of liberation. And so that not rejecting the things that are difficult, I think that could be misunderstood spiritual path. We want to be happy, we want to be light, we want to be connected with the cosmos, but sometimes it means that we disassociate from like how we're really doing and the people close to us, our society, and the challenges and the suffering. So for me, that's important to kind of keep alive for myself, and obviously it's a big part of the tradition too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. For me, it's very similar. For me, living a spiritual life means living in connection. And like you were saying, when I was a kid, I would ride the bus to school, and I would look out the window, and I would wonder, it's like, why don't people treat each other better? Like that was something that was like, it was in me as a kid, right? And later on, it became my life. It became the work that I do right now. It's just creating well-being, and for me, that's living a spiritual life. Well, that's a spiritual life. It's got nothing to do with religion. Religion can lead us into living a spiritual life, but for me, there's been a very big difference between religion and a spiritual life, and it's got a lot to do with my mom, right? Because my mom's not really much into religion, and I think that she taught me that really good. But I sort of made peace with religious practices as a way or as means of living a spiritual life, which is for me living connected, right? Connected to myself and connected to everything and everyone around me. So, yeah, how would you say you came into living a spiritual life? Because I think, this is my personal opinion, you may have a different opinion. I think society leads us to separation right now, the way we've set it up. And we have to do a certain amount of effort to come into connection with ourselves and everything around us. So would you agree with that? And if that's true for you, how did you come to terms with that?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a combination of both touching the joy of being alive, the beauty of life, but at the same time feeling like the life I also lived after graduating from university and working and living in Stockholm, and being on the early stages in a career and seeing people around me, just felt also like this existential vacuum of feeling like, wow, there's more to this, like this inner knowing, not just asking if there's more to life than this, but knowing it, but not seeing it around. So for a while, I think trying to find small little things to shift and to make sure I meditate every day, even if my friends weren't interested. My mom has been the longest spiritual friend, and also who got me into meditation at in the first place, so that we have in common also. But so this combination of having touched something more precious and being separated from it by just the way I was trained in school and what I was told was things to pursue and how to live my life in society. It just didn't match somehow. So I think there was that kind of sense of knowing there's more to life that made me see like, okay, and in the midst of this, I cannot see it more clearly. I just had enough of a hunch. So I just leave what I'm doing, ended the relationship, and I quit my job, and I just started traveling, and it became like an exploration. I didn't have any kind of set intention of becoming a monk at that time, but just more exploring what I really want to do with my life. I think that is also like a spiritual path of asking ourselves the questions like, what's important to me, and what do I really want to do? What do I see I flourish in? What do I see like I feel drawn to, and not just getting into the race of rushing and accumulating that society is telling us kind of one day later on make us fulfilled.
Yeah, that's so great, because my experience is in a broad term similar. I was working in corporations before I became an independent consultant, and I got to a point where I'm like, I made this realization. It's like I don't understand what I'm doing here. It doesn't make sense, right? I want to help people. I want to share what I know. I had already done my master's degree, but I still was working in a corporation, and I had all this knowledge about entrepreneurship and family businesses and all that. And I studied that because I'm fourth generation of a family business that dismembered the family and the business when it went from second to third. So when the family business went from my grandfather to my mother and her siblings, the whole business got dismembered, and the family also. So I studied family businesses just out of personal curiosity. And it's like, why? Like, there's a master's degree in family business, and all I know about family businesses is that they don't work. That's everything that I knew about it. So as I finished it, I came back to Costa Rica. I started working in a corporation again, and I came after a year. I was like, this doesn't make sense. I don't understand why I'm doing this. I have all this knowledge. I'm not sharing it. I see other family businesses having trouble. I want to share with them. And I want to share my knowledge with them. That was 15 years ago. And I never came back. And that day, that was probably the best decision I made in my life. Because my life turned around from being about making money and growing in a corporate ladder and just working to create an impact. And I didn't really realize it at that moment. It took me a few years, like three years, to actually realize that my life had become that, and that I wanted my life to be that. But I think that day that I made that decision, it was in September 2004. Yeah, 2004. That 2005, September 2005, I made that decision that I wanted my life to mean something for others, not only for myself. So that was actually a turning point in my life. Would you say you have there's a turning point in your life, something that actually triggered that move, and obviously the decision of becoming an ordained monk, right? That's that's not something you take lightly.
Well, one important milestone in the journey was when I took a vacation on my own in June the last year I was working. I just started learning scuba diving the previous winters. I went to the Red Sea in Egypt and went scuba diving and was in the desert, mostly on my own, very few people around. And during those times, and just being hovering in water like that too, it really brings you into a meditative state in a very kind of a natural way of just feeling connected and light and quiet inside too. And so I was on the 1 week vacation. I came back, and because I was invested enough in this idea, I was working as a young lawyer at a newly started law firm, and I had this like idea then of like, it's a good thing to do, it's a prestigious thing to do. And coming back, I had this idea, I need to get back to work. So I came in like on Wednesday evenings, I went in working on Thursday and Friday. By Friday evening, I was calling my mom, we're talking, and I started crying, and she told me, it's like, do you hear what you're saying? I say, yeah, I have to quit. And so, a couple of months later, I worked my last day on my 29th birthday. So that was like a kind of a big leap into the unknown a little bit. And then just adjusting to my experience along that path. And what once I got to India and discovered the Buddha's teaching in a meditation environment, because I also had this deep resistance and mistrust to what would be seen as organized religion. But when being in that environment of practice and with also a lot of other young people from across the world and hearing the teaching, it just makes so much sense to me. It's like, okay, so the suffering, the confusion, like the dissatisfaction that I'm experiencing, like Prince Siddhartha, he had those, and he kind of decided to, figure out what this is about. And so in that sense, it just went very deep, that retreat. And then my time in India just became a prolonged retreat in different contexts. And it also gave me a chance to practice with other young people, because up until that point in time in Sweden is very few young people or any that I've become like friends with that meditated or that were interested in spiritual workshops or lectures and so on. So that was very empowering to see, okay, like I'm not weird, I'm not strange to have this interest. There's other young educated people in the world that also have this interest. So that made a huge difference for me, actually. And so that was like a swing board, and then going to Plum Village, because part of my mind was also wanting it to make sense to friends back home what I was doing, and then like, shape shift in mid-air to have a new career coming home and like just hitting the ground running kind of thing. But I was like, no, I'm not ready. I don't know what I want to do. I don't have anything new to offer that I want to engage in. I don't want to go back to what I was doing. So it's like, I was able to register for a long retreat in Plum Village, and I just kept extending it, because also that of being around other young people that were practicing, of being in an environment where I get nourished and doing the things that had been like my hobby as like full-time occupation. But also seeing how I benefited from the older brothers' practice, and how many people kept coming and came and benefited from what we were doing. So it felt like home, family, and friends together with practice and service. It kind of came together. It's just all in one place. So as I continued to stay, and I felt like what I want to do is what we're doing right here. So then the next step seems kind of a natural to ask to ordain. And there was some other young monks that had ordained, and there was one day that was like the clicking point, because I went kind of back and forth, ordain or not, like for a couple of months at least. And so at the end of 7 months in Plum Village, we had the afternoon sitting, and I was sitting in front of a couple of the older brothers at that time, and I just felt so much love and so much peace. So that was like the last click. It's like, I have to allow myself to receive this gift and like live this kind of life, because I felt it was so nourishing and healing. So more that the path that I was, and the path and the service and the way of living in community that I kind of joined in, and never being completely caught and seeing like, a Buddhist monk is the only form, is the best form to have a spiritual life. But like So with that, actually, I get to do what I want to do, and somehow alcohol or relationship or like freedom to travel when and where I wanted to, it didn't seem to be so important anymore, because I was getting a more nutritious diet, maybe you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get really touched when I think about some of those things and some of those people that've been there to support me, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's, and I know we talked about not using a lot of Buddhist terms, but that's a true definition of a sangha, right? That group of people that we get to bond and share and walk the path with, right? So, and yeah, I know what you mean. It's so great, so beautiful. Olga has a question, and I invite everyone, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. Um, but actually, and actually, Olga's question is very much related to something that you mentioned. I would love to talk about that. Which is, Olga says, asks if we can talk about suffering as a path of transformation. And you mentioned Siddhartha, right? And I don't know if everyone knows who Prince Siddhartha is. He's the one that, through personal development or meditation, became what we know as the Buddha, right? That's very simplifying. I'm oversimplifying his story, right? But he's the one we follow, right? Because I think there's something, the way I see it, there's something very important about the way that the question is phrased, suffering as a path of transformation. I would not feel, or I do not connect to the phrase like that. I would say that we can acknowledge suffering as a trigger to lead us in a path of transformation, not using suffering as a path of transformation, but to like lead us into it. Right? For me, and one of the things that I share with people is assuming unconditional responsibility for ourselves. And we'll talk about that because I have some opinions about my personal experience with unconditional responsibility. But when suffering comes up and we recognize it, when we assume unconditional responsibility for it, then we start on that path, right, of transformation. So what do you think about that? Like, what does it mean? What does that mean for you? Because you mentioned Siddhartha, right?
Yeah, there's, I described a little bit of what brought me to a spiritual path, and living in a practice community and seeing many that are either on a path for a long time or embarking on it. The coming in contact with suffering is often, not always, but often a key ingredient into like wanting to relieve suffering. And the Buddha, many times when people ask metaphysical questions or philosophical speculations, he would share that I teach about suffering and the end of suffering, meaning the transformation. Our teacher also talk about as well-being. And so when we talk about the usefulness of suffering is as a medicine, because we're either resisting our suffering, we don't want to suffer. And so we're resisting it, we're making it worse, and we keep acting unconsciously. We don't understand the causes of suffering. We don't understand how we're contributing to our suffering. And then actually there's no way out. There's no transformation possible because we're resisting it. Or we might have a habit of being so caught in our suffering that we just rehearse it and we kind of swim around in the mud, and we kind of, we identify with our suffering too. That's another extreme where it doesn't lead to the transformation and healing. And so the usefulness of suffering is to accept that there is suffering and to understand the causes of it. Also to embrace that we're not too kind of quick to wanting to, it's uncomfortable, it's suffering, someone is really sad, I just want them to be happy, and like pat them on the shoulder, whether it's inside or another person. But actually, do I have the strength and the courage to be with suffering and just see its face and to listen to it, to understand where do you come from? What are the ingredients that have made you who you are? And so when we talk about the usefulness of suffering, we also talk about when we know how to suffer, we suffer much less. We cannot completely avoid suffering. and discomfort and dissatisfaction. Suffering is like comes from dukkha, which means a kind of a dissatisfaction. It's like you have sand in the wheel, so it's like it's not running smooth. So it doesn't have to be just the most grieving, terrifying moments of our lives, but also this daily kind of disgruntlement is also part of the suffering, which is many times optional. When we recognize how our mind is reacting, whether we recognize the habits of our emotions, and we just through following our breath, taking moments to stop and getting like a little bit of space around this, it becomes less tempting to just react and go down the same path of reactivity or resistance and the path of suffering. So it can help us to touch that. It really ask ourselves, really, does life have to be like this? Do I really want to kind of keep going into these cycles? And also, it's not just kind of wanting to transcend our suffering. I remember the first several years I was meditating, it was actually quite painful too, because I was touching more stillness and ease inside, more energy. But then without having the tools of understanding to relate to my habits, my tendencies, I was just recognizing my suffering even more kind of face on and not having any ways to kind of, not concrete ways to work with this. I also think that is important in the spiritual path, that it's not just a meditation technique or something, but it's like a way to relate to life and all the conditions our life faces us with. So it doesn't become an escape or an avoidance, but also not becoming like, this is my suffering. And this also, happiness is an important ingredient on the path. And for us to be able to hold and take good care and transform our suffering, we also need to know how to nourish our happiness, our well-being, and our amazement of how wonderful the world and our life is, even in this moment with all the suffering still going on.
Yes. Yeah, I love the way you put that. When I was young, my mom taught me something that we later had another conversation about it. She's like, "Why do you do that?" I'm like, "Well, because you taught me that." She basically told me that when an emotion comes up, what we want to do is we want to dive into it and make it as big as possible till it blows up, right? So one of the things that I learned from that, when I was a kid, I couldn't question a lot of things, right? I probably would have questioned that a lot right now. But one of the things that that taught me is to not be afraid of uncomfortable emotions, right, or constrictive emotions. So if I was sad, I would get that sadness. I would make it grow, 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 grow until it fades away, right? And when I hear you speak, I I hear that acceptance, or I see myself as being young and having that acceptance of those emotions that I did not like, um, and just dive into them and accept them and experience them until they went away, right? Obviously, I couldn't understand a lot of other things around it, and like you said, there's this way of being that we also need to learn. But yes, I agree with you that acceptance is the way to a state of love, basically, right? A state of well-being. Huh. Um, yeah, so there's a question here. If suffering is always there, from Flo, if suffering is always there, how do you ease it up? uh, do you want to start that out?
So we talk a lot about the importance of where our perception leads us. What do we see? What do we experience? What do we pay attention to? And it's all, we have a lot of habits around what we pay attention to and what we perceive inside of us and around us. So we might be very attentive to the suffering either inside or around us. But so at times, if suffering is such a kind of a constant in our life, we need to give ourselves the gift to also open up to the wonderful things that are already there, even with suffering still going on. We don't have to wait until there's no more suffering to be happy. And I have to wait for all our challenges and nitty-gritty situations in daily life to be smoothed out for us to be able to like, smile and see like life is amazing. So that is available for us, but sometimes we need to shift our focus, and not just as a positive thinking, but as actually like recognizing and acknowledging what is also there in this moment, and not getting caught in the habituation of our consciousness, our brain, our nervous system to maybe respond and experience maybe life as threatening, and it has causes. Maybe there's causes from childhood or generational suffering that make us feel like under threat or very cautious all the time. We cannot relax. We cannot open up to the beauty. We feel very vulnerable. And so for some friends, it's in that situation, but still like being in situations where it's actually in this situation, I don't need to like to also question that. We use the phrase, am I sure? Am I sure my perception is correct? Is suffering, is that what's there? Or is there also well-being there? Is there like conditions for me to be happy and feel safe right now? Whatever it might be, to also explore that. We call that also the practice of changing the track. So we might have this track that habitually goes on in us, whether we're complaining about the person or situation in our life, or we're kind of trapped in a certain habit or experience from our own lives. And it can sometimes take us away from the bigger picture. It hijacks our life and is not correct. It's not the whole picture, at least. You know, it might be partly incorrect even by itself. And so allowing ourselves to change the track and to kind of, for me, the best and the easiest way to do that is to come in contact with the natural world, whether it's a sunset or whether it's a tree, and come in contact with life happening and manifesting beautifully in this moment. And when our mind maybe goes into the direction of the suffering or the challenges and the smog in the air, so making the beautiful colors of the sunset even more vivid, like, okay, we're focusing that the Earth is actually rotating around its own axle and moving around the sun. This is amazing, like out in open space. So that is like the bewilderment. It's like, wow, and I'm here, I'm breathing, I can see and witness all this. This is amazing. And so for us not to be able to touch that is a pity.
Yes. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, for me, one of the things that has helped a lot is acceptance, as you mentioned before. When we accept suffering, when I accept suffering, then one of the things that happens is that I stop struggling. Right? Mm-hmm. So I stop fighting against it. I stop trying to deny it or keep my mind busy so I don't think about that. It's like just dive into it. And when we dive into it, then another thing that a word that has a lot of power and meaning for me is impermanence. But just understand that it'll pass, right? Mm-hmm. And even that, and emotions will only show up for a peak, or will only peak for a moment, right? For a little while, and then it'll come back down. And making peace with that and integrating that into my life, then I allow myself to go through those peaks. Right, and understand that peaks can be anger, it can be sadness, as well as happiness and ecstasies, and everything comes down. Right, we can't remain in that state of just ecstasies all the time. Right, so just understand that they come and go allows me to remain at peace with what comes up. That's been my experience in dealing with emotions, my own emotions and my suffering. Right? So, yeah, and I love what you say, because when we stop fighting or struggling, then we can see that not everything is bad. Right? There's a lot of beauty around. There may be a few things that don't feel good at that moment, but there's this amazing, this thing called life happening that we're missing out because we're focusing on something that's part of it. Yeah, love it.
I think also there with the wave of strong emotion and so on too, that it depends on how we relate to it, as you're saying. If we can accept it and observe it, then it can pass and have its natural course like that. But many times we start thinking and we're resisting it, and we feed ourselves music or something that actually feeds this emotion, this suffering in us, rather than kind of letting it have its course and not being swept away by it. So we're like creating a tsunami out of this wave sometimes, just because our way of relating. So that is one kind of aspect of that. Suffering can also be optional. Like how much we suffer is also up to us. It's not just the conditions.
Yeah. And
how you're speaking about the importance of accepting them and kind of also being willing to, we would kind of maybe not call it dive into them, but feeling them and embracing them. So there's still space around, so we don't like get the risk of getting carried away or caught by them or identifying with them, but also to see that spaciousness around, to feel that, I am, this feeling is present in me and I'm much more than that.
Yeah, that leads me to another question that's here. And I think Beatriz is asking if we can talk about the relationship between attachment and suffering. So I think you just touched the just touched it, right? So I don't know if you want to go a little bit deeper into it, like, because you just mentioned it, right? You don't want to dive into it or become it, right?
But there's also sometimes, especially in Buddhist teaching, sometimes we misunderstand both craving and then attachment and suffering. We think it's like, it equals, one equals the other, and attachment or grasping is the only cause of our suffering. And it's not completely the whole picture. Yes, it's an important ingredient, but also that craving and that grasping is unskillful ways of trying to be happy that is based on ignorance and not on insight. So it's important to also to nurture kind of a contentment in what we do have, and gratitude for the miracle of having running water in our homes, for example, as like an antidote too for this greed that may be in us, and the attachment. We think that I can be happy only if these people will be with me forever. And it's also based on ignorance, because we all get sick and also die. That's one of the beauties and challenges actually living in community. You meet a lot of wonderful people, and mostly you're going to be separated from them, because very few stay in the same place as long as I've done. And then we live in a different center, but you don't have time and energy to keep a relationship going. Some leave monastic life and it's even further away. And some, monastic also pass away. One of my closest friends on the path passed a couple of years ago from, after long and, rich life, but still it's like these kind of areas, the people, the situation that we're attached to, it can lead to suffering, but it also can bring about a lot of gratitude and a lot of love, and a lot of like, this is also part of life. If we're so detaching in a way that we're not connecting, we're not really like present with each other, and that actually we lose out on a lot of the preciousness. We just kind of, so is a depending on what Buddhist teachings or practices you might have experienced, it can be tricky terrain to maneuver. So I say that, attachment can also lead to love and caring and gratitude, but it has to be combined with the willingness to let go when conditions are such. You don't imprison the other person. You don't make this situation or that work or that apartment as the only conditions for your happiness. And if you're separated from it, you'll suffer. Then you're setting yourself up for suffering for sure. but it also means that we really care about someone or some things. In that sense, it's like, you know, we want to keep the baby and throw out the dirty bathwater, you know?
Yeah, I love that image. Yeah, no, and I agree with you. There's this level of attachment that we need so that we care enough that we act upon it. But at the same time, understanding, again, for me, the word impermanence is so important in my life. Just understanding that things will end, right? And will transform and are transforming all the time, right? So it's like we want to care enough that we enjoy and we engage, but at the same time, it's like we want to have this understanding that things are changing and they will change in the future, and at some point we need to allow things to flow, right? So yeah, and we don't want to get attached to suffering. That's something that we certainly don't want to do, and we don't want to identify, make it part of our identity, right? It's like, oh yes, I am the victim, right? Yeah, so we want to move away from that. So I want to ask you another. Oh, you want to say something?
No, I just saw Marlin's comment there. Is good, pertinent.
Oh, and yet may I be free from attachment and aversion, yet not be indifferent. Yes, exactly. That's beautiful. So let's talk about, because you had this two phrases you wanted to talk about, and I think they're really powerful, and I want to move into them, and I want to dedicate some time into it. It's like, am I good enough, and have I done a good enough job? Because those, when you wrote those two phrases for me, are like, oh, that's something where that hits home, right? Right. Because for me, it's like, am I good enough? That's been one of the things that has been a challenge for the past few years, or not few, but quite a few years. And it hits in the relation in how we started our relationship, right? It's like, wow, it's like, I'm gonna have this monk sitting in my workshop. Am I gonna do a good enough job to, like, give him anything that's worthwhile, right? It's like, is he spending, like, his time, is wasting his time with me? Is he and all these stories are going on in my mind, right? So that hits home for me. So I want to hear you, and if you want to ask me questions, I'm open to it. But I want to hear.
Yeah, I think it came out of hearing many people saying that they feel like they're their worst self-critic. And I think also coming from a Christianized society, even if we're secularized to a big extent for the last couple of generations, there's still this kind of a feeling like we've done something wrong and we're gonna get it. So behave, work hard, and maybe you'll kind of won't get as deep of a trouble as, you know. So it's a little bit this fear-based thing. It's like we're trying to prove for something, I'm not such a bad person. So we're already kind of like, we're way back. We're not starting at the starting line in life, but we're kind of asked to start 50 yards back, you know. And maybe in different religious and cultures, it has more or less prominence. But I do feel that is one thing that drives us in society, and that has been driving me for sure. Like, I think the challenging part is there, the comparison. I compare my actions to other people and then say, oh, okay, am I better than them? Okay, I'm better than them. It's okay, I'm good enough, then I'm okay. Or like, am I worse than them? It's like, maybe actually he's been like going on these retreats. If my mind gets into that place, I cannot be happy. I cannot be okay with what I am and what I am living, what I'm acting in this moment. So the comparing mind of like in Sweden, we're world champions in wanting to be equal to each other, which is beautiful at one level. And it also, what I've experienced living away from Sweden for many years, is also it's taken away a sense of cherishment and respect for our differences, and for that I maybe have qualities, you have other qualities, and that make a beautiful bouquet of flowers if we can allow them to both be flowers, and we don't have to just be yellow tulips, all of us. Mm-hmm. So I think that is where it becomes a complex, where equality becomes a complex and a hindrance. We're trying to be the same, so that when we're the same, then we're good and we're okay. So our scary start can be laid down. But if we what I see, if I act from a place of love and care, and I do it because I enjoy doing it, if it comes like, if I give a class for 3 aspirants, or if I give a talk for 300 people, I don't care. I just want to touch the Dharma and to share about the Dharma because it helped me so much. And then they come from a different place. It's not coming from like, okay, so how many like people have viewed this talk on YouTube or something? And like, how about my other brothers? Like, if you get into a mode like that, you can never be happy. So I think that compare, whatever situation in life you are, if we compare, we cannot be good enough. And our job can always be better, right? So is that again of like how to accept and rejoice in what I can do in this moment, and also want to continue to grow. And I know I can be a lot freer. I can be a lot more happy. I can be more loving and skillful, but still saying like, okay, like, and I did a pretty good job, you know? So they can kind of go together, that wanting to grow, but not at the expense of like feeling bad about ourselves. I think this with the self-critic too is, sometimes come out as depending on language a little bit, like we confuse sometimes if we feel bad about something we've done, which actually Buddhist psychology is a good thing. If we've done something we recognize is unskillful, it causes suffering for ourselves or others, it's helpful that we kind of feel a little bit shameful about that, feeling ouch, or regret with some kind of inspiration to wanting not to repeat that. That's a healthy thing. But then it can be feeling like, I'm bad because I keep acting in this way. Then it's like, I think in psychology, you call it shame. You feel bad about yourself. And that would just take you downward spiral. But then maybe you have guilt over your actions. Okay, I'm not like good because my actions are not, I haven't prepared enough for this talk. I just winged it and it went so, or like, but that is something you could work with still. It could be a motivator. It also is important, especially like on the spiritual path, to keep having like yourself, but also people around you helping give you a mirror of like where you're at and where is your shortcomings, and not in a way to beat up on ourselves, but to see like, yes, I'm still causing suffering and I don't want to cause suffering, and come back from that good, wonderful intention of wanting to contribute to well-being in the world and to ease suffering. And then for me, I feel like the question, am I good enough? It kind of falls away to a big extent. There's always a little bit kind of like this comparing mind and like, have I done the right thing? It's more for me, I think, is have I done the right thing? Am I putting my time and energy into the right places? Or am I missing something? So I think that's where also I try to be proactive of getting input too, to kind of not be too sure about my own thoughts and feelings about my own actions, but to also get input from others. So that kind of, feedback, I think is really important to also kind of people that we do care about and that we respect their way of living. And we could go on a little bit, but I was also, for me, the workshop, I saw it in a very different light, because I was just kind of barely crawling out of my room at that point in time. So I was just, okay, we were just there. I was just having a 2-week vacation, and, the doctor said, this is workshop too. And they're, saying like, okay, I want to be a learner, I kind of easy when we live and we teach, it can be easy to identify, now I'm a teacher. And then we start kind of creating a role out of it. No, I want to be a learner. That's one thing that my teacher very, clearly taught me, even as a senior master of like still learning and still being humble and curious. So yeah, it was wonderful, that workshop. I can recommend it.
Thank you. It's so great. Thank you for that. Yeah, I fully agree with you. The am I good enough is something that, well, I've experienced myself quite a bit, but I also see it in as part of society, right? Always making sure that, or always comparing ourselves, and it's like you got to make sure that you're achieving and you're doing and you're getting yourself somewhere, and look where other people are, and um, so and I've been a part of that. But then what has helped me make peace with it, and what helped me with our experience was like, am I acting from my heart? Am I acting from purpose? Like, what's my purpose here? My purpose here is to share what I know, and then have a beginner's mind, right? And it's like, well, if someone's giving me feedback, then I open myself up to listening to it, to embracing it, and to see if it makes sense, if I can align that feedback with my purpose and what I'm doing. And as long as I'm coming from an open heart, then whatever comes out is what needs to come out, and whatever I do is what needs to be done. And I can always learn and grow, and that's what I want to do, right? To always be learning and growing, but not from a state of I did bad, I need to do better, but from a state of I want to connect, right? And I want to have deeper connections all the time with myself and others around me. So that's helped me ease up those stories in my head that I should be doing this, or uh, and this should be happening. I could have done better. So,
Mm-hmm.
that's really, it really hurts ourselves, right? It really damages our self-image.
Mm-hmm.
It makes us suffer a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just
So
a small point that comes to mind with this is also just that, again, that there's causes for everything. So like the qualities and strength I have now, they don't come from nowhere. Like some of them I picked up from my parents, some of them from my society, some from older brothers and sisters and my teachers. And so it's like, it's not me, it's not mine, but I celebrate them and let them go through me. And then I can see also that with unskillfulness, it's like, okay, I still kind of make a mess of this. And I maybe can see some of those causes. I understand this, like, I'm like this because my life or my childhood was like that, or the society I grew up in was like this. And so it is not to condone and just kind of act like we're acting because there's a reason for it, but it helps that understanding and that acceptance of the situation so we can move through it if we wish, if we feel like. So letting aspiration, that wanting to come from the heart and connect, like you're mentioning, be the motivating energy of growth.
yes, yes. Yeah, and that leads me into another thing that I wanted to talk about the challenges of living a spiritual life, right? Because for me, it's like you just scratch the surface on that for me, which is one of my biggest challenges, was assuming unconditional responsibility for everything that happens within me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that was something. It took me a while to embrace that concept of everything that happens within me, it's on me, right? And because then I started fluctuating between judgment, I'm not doing good enough, I'm messing this up, and then the other side where it's like I don't want to assume unconditional responsibility. This is not mine. I have a right to be angry, sad, whatever, right? So I kept moving between those two, and it took me a while to. I can't say I'm always in the middle, but it took me a while to get to a point where I don't fluctuate that much. As the beginning, it was like I either like hit myself in the back every day, or move to the other side. It's like, no, I'm not taking responsibility for that. And that's been one of my biggest challenges, just accepting that, yeah, everything that happens within me is mine, and I can train myself to deal with it and to move forward from it and to bring myself to a state of peace. Um, um, but that's been hard, right? And it sometimes still is, right? Sometimes when I find myself like moving, like everyone, like having emotions or having thoughts that I don't want, um, I still sometimes think about, hey, should I bring out the whip, or should I just blame someone else and let go of that? But it's been a process of basically healing the relationship with myself, because that's the for me that's been the key. Like that's been my understanding. It's like getting to that point where I need to treat myself with love, and that means I assume responsibility without hurting myself, uh, or without hurting others, or blaming others. So that's been my biggest challenge in my spiritual path. How about you?
Yeah, I think it is that has come to new light the last couple of years. I got my cancer diagnosis almost 2 years ago, and I think with that it made me realize even more deeply that I don't keep much of a reserve for myself. I can generate energy and enthusiasm and peace and joy and so on, and I like let it circulate out in the world again. And it's not enough backup. And so I think I was overconfident in that, and I think it goes also together with not wanting to say no and wanting, is that maybe of being good enough, seeing like the need in the world and the interest in the world for practice. And also that is something to go places and be in people's circumstance and share the practices, what I also enjoy the most. That's one of the beauties of spiritual life, I find. And then also there of finding a realistic balance or dynamic with rest and just enjoying the practice and rejuvenation, and then overextending of putting too much energy out. I think that is also that led me to like, okay, I just like when I took a sabbatical from work and so on, I cannot figure out right now to kind of take the next step here. That's a little bit why I asked for sabbatical in Sweden now too, because I see like even this past year with limited energy, I've been partly because of my own habit and partly because of the need around me being pulled out in a way that is totally not sustainable, and seeing like I cannot continue like this. And there doesn't seem to be a way out in the circumstance. So I just like, okay, I want to make sure I don't get, sick again. So I think that is also an important aspect from learning for that. But also it's that of taking responsibility for actions. I think it's I don't know, it's challenging to keep looking and discover what we would call our habit energies or our internal knots, and not kind of just gloss them over. Well, maybe in psychology you would talk about as shadows, but to keep practicing with them and seeing like, okay, it's not that they're all going to be transformed and then I have something to offer, but they're like, they're whispering in my ear now and then, and they kind of follow me around like shadow does. So to acknowledge that it is there, I think it could be both challenging and rewarding. And I think also depending on what kind of spiritual life we live, is having lived in a community for 18 years and been a monk for over 17, like people put so much faith and good energy and confidence in us, and kind of like it can easy in that form of spiritual life, it can easy be feeling like, I'm important. I've like, and now I have wisdom and so on. And some even novices kind of fall prey for that, and they think they're like great Zen masters and they have the answer and the solutions for everyone. It can be very dangerous because people like look at us as representatives of our teacher, or as the Buddha and the disciples of the Buddha. So is their practice, but for us, we also then see us as a continuation to humble ourselves and wanting to continue to learn and offer what we can generously, but also, so I think that kind of the responsibility for actions, and we get trained in that too, in seeing that our actions, and this is our thinking, our words, and our bodily actions are our true continuation. They're the ground on which we stand. So it can be challenging, but it also is really empowering, because then you don't give your power and strength and freedom away to circumstances, but you can like, okay, actually I have something to say on this. I have something, to be involved in this process of freedom. It doesn't just fall into place when conditions are right, because they're never right. They have to come from internally. So it's essential, I think, that point in terms of a spiritual life.
Yeah, it ends up being, well, for me, I don't know if you would agree with it, but it's a constant dance, right, between like being aware of, like being humble, but at the same time being willing to step up at certain moments, and being willing to speak up at certain moments, and understanding that there's time for everything, and it's a dance between knowing when to step forward, when to step back, and how to move all those energies and those dynamics, and being aware of ourselves all the time and where we're coming from. That's also been a challenge for me, something that questioning, when am I coming from an ego standpoint and when I'm coming from my heart, right? And sometimes it's not that clear, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, I want to say this, right? And it feels it's coming from my heart, and then after you put it out, it's like, oh, it wasn't coming from my heart. It's like, oh, right? And there's where sometimes the whip, when it wants to come out, it's like, oh, I'm messing up. So yeah, I love what you say, the way you see it, and it's a beautiful dance for me, right? It's nice when we treat ourselves with compassion, right? Some point, it was a learning process for me to treat myself with compassion. It still is. It's a daily practice, but some point I was really hard on myself, and that was one of the hardest things I experienced. Right? Like you were saying, it's like we tend to be our biggest judges. Right? You know. So, what's fun about a spiritual life?
I was waiting for you to come to this question. I think a background to this is when we talked, just the two of us not long ago, we just laugh a lot, and we see the preciousness, I feel, of, having a good friend on the path and exchanging experiences and supporting each other. And so for sure, that is, many people maybe wouldn't describe it as fun, but like to have quality listening and sharing, I feel like that is at least a great joy, and it makes you laugh. So I think it comes close, or comes into the umbrella of fun. But I think it's, for me, the path is also about well-being and happiness. So, fun comes in there. And many people that come to our monastery, and they have a certain idea of what monastics should do and shouldn't. And we have fine manners and many different rules and regulations of how we should behave, or how we behave as a training, not because we have to or should, but because we take it on as a training. But sometimes the ones that understand us the best is the one that also spend lazy afternoon with us, or stay longer period at the monastery. So they go hiking with us on a lazy day and so on. And like, we joke around and we tease each other and we play sports, and like, it's a kind of, it's those aspects of fun too. Is not only sincere and calm, but it's also like celebrating life and singing together and so on. So I think those are some of the ingredients that also I appreciate with our communities, that is not just a practice, but it's a way of life. It's like you include culture in there, you include song and poetry and, you know, extracurricular activities. So whenever I see local groups, they also have like potlucks, and they have like, you know, a day in the park and stuff. I'm very happy, because then it becomes like a friendship that goes beyond like, you know, the sitting and the reading and the sharing of something, which is also very important. That is, you need those kind of more maybe playful, more joyful, just human activities that puts like context to our life and our practice too. And, you know, so it's being able to enjoy those. It also makes me feel like, if I feel I'm too busy to sit down with friends to you know, have a cup of tea and just talk and have some good laughs for like nothing too serious or nothing too deep, then I see I'm overextending myself. So it also like, can I laugh and can I have fun is also a good barometer for me to be like, no, I'm too serious now. I'm like too engaged. I'm doing too many things. I don't have the space to just like, you know, look, you know, leave. Yeah, have the space to have fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so great for me. For me, it's been one. It's just finding peace, right? And I agree with you. It's like some people may not think of that as fun, but after you've been struggling a lot with your mind and all that, it's just for getting to that point where you're not struggling anymore. It's like you're just working, but you're not struggling. It's like, oh, that feels so good, right? So that's one of them, and then. The other one for me has been what's been fun is embracing my humanity, right?
Mm.
Just acknowledging that I'm just a human being. Because at some point in my life, it's like, oh, I gotta do everything right, right? And then there's a question there: how do you practice compassion daily? So for me, it was that it was understanding what compassion meant for me, compassion towards self. It's like stop being so hard on yourself and just accept that you're human, and that you have desires and you have thoughts that are not that pure, and you have emotions, and it's like, ah, oh, yeah, that's good. So I learned to dance with them instead of
Mm.
rejecting them and trying to like
Mm.
forcefully uh, uh, remove them from my life. It's like, yeah, there's sometimes in my life where, yeah, my mind just wants to wander off and think about stuff that I would rather not think about. But it's like, yeah, that's fine. And then
Mm.
when it gets too much, and I just bring it back and move forward. But I've learned to have fun with myself, right? With everything that comes up, right? With my thoughts, with my emotions. It's just enjoying
Mm.
myself, and then you can connect. What for me the result has been is like you can connect to others from a different space,
Mm.
right? And just even when I'm working with people and we're dealing with very deep stuff, it's still fun, right? It's still like, hey, it's just an emotion, right? Hey, it's just someone asked, let me see who it was. Someone asked if trauma could be healed. Veronica asked, um, can you heal trauma even if you don't know why that happened? Um, Even dealing with trauma, I'd say the answer is absolutely yes, because it's not about what happened, is the way we see stuff right now about what happened, the way we interpret what happened right now. Um, so even with when I'm dealing with that, I'm still having fun. I'm laughing with my clients when they're going through very deep stuff. I just and when I see I'm laughing, it's like I'm helping, I'm connecting to them. I'm seeing their humanity. I'm seeing their suffering. Yet at the same time, I know they're beautiful human beings, and I get to enjoy and connect to them from that space. And that's been the most beautiful gift of the work that I do right now. And my personal path has been getting to connect to myself, even when I'm suffering, and pain comes up. Um, still being to love myself, and then when I work with people around me, it's just understanding them that, yeah, suffering happens. It's something that we all go through, and pain happens, and it's something that we all go through, and we can still deeply connect even when that's coming up. um, so yeah, just it's been for me the underlying blanket for all of this is just peace. Having peace with myself and coming to terms with others from a space of peace just makes everything lighter, right? So, yeah. Huh.
Yeah, there's one more point of fun, and then maybe something on trauma is observing. My mind can be very interesting and fun at times. It's fun when there's enough space and there's enough clarity around to see like this just silly. This is like, really, I'm thinking this again, or this is how I react to this situation one more time. Come on. But at times I kind of laugh out loud, just like in the midst of no particular situation, just because I observed this, like, madness in my head still going on, but having enough space around it not to believe it. So I think that could be fun on the path too, of actually like that self-exploration and getting to know ourselves, for sure. I think there's many elements to trauma that could be like its own session too, because collective consciousness and as individuals, we've gone through many different kinds of traumas for a long time that has many time go unresolved, and we haven't been able to let them go, like animals shake scary situations off by like shaking and so on. We've kept them, encapsulated them in our consciousness, and both on sometimes on family and generational levels, sometimes on societal levels and different groups of people levels, whether it be gender, race, or whatever. Like, you can see there's trauma in all of those different segments, and some are maybe being re-triggered more vigorously than others, let's say that. So it's become very difficult to transform the trauma if it's being re-triggered. I think that is also like kind of the humility of seeing, yes, you need good conditions to be able to relax and to embrace enough, and having support too, if we don't have a really strong presence ourselves, to have support with acknowledging and being with the energy of this trauma as it comes up and manifests, even in this moment, even if it might have been a long time ago since something actually traumatized us. And seeing that is not, it's part of how I'm feeling in this present moment, and it traces way back. And there's habits in my consciousness and my body to touch this and to re-experience this. And that is not necessary. I think that is several stepping stones along to see like, okay, so it's there. And kind of, I think it's important to seek enough conditions to nourish ourselves, to be in situations where we also feel safe enough. So whether it's through sharing about it or through experience it in our body enough so that we can hold it and release it, I think is very important. So nourishing conditions, and also being in a situation where it doesn't get re-triggered. I think that is also, sometimes we used to something, so we kind of actually put ourselves in a situation that re-triggers us, and obviously that's not helpful. So yeah, I think there's a lot of wonderful practice and teaching on trauma going out. I know that a good friend and Dharma teacher Larry Ward and Peggy Rowe, they're teaching about trauma resiliency. I think they call it the 8 gates or something. They also have online courses. I also see that this particular area is also many new skillful teachings and practices to help transform. So
yeah, I love what you're saying, and I would just add that one of the key things is for us to not make trauma part of our identity, right? It's like when we see trauma or whatever happens to us as something that happens and not who we are able to just embrace it in a different way, right? And just work with it in a different way. And so, yeah, I love that. Earthgate course with Larry Ward at the Lotus Institute. That's what Karen says. Thank you, Karen, for that information. Now we have another question here that from Malin. She says, as a layperson, I find that I have the opposite experience. Well, we were talking about something before. I tend to make my insights smaller because I'm just a layperson. Mm-hmm. Any advice concerning this? How do you trust your spiritual life? What do you mean you're just a layperson? I would really the problem's right there. You just gotta cross that out, that word. Right?
No, but this is easy a complex that happens when you have a community that consists of both monastic and lay. Lay is not a good term, right? Because then the monastics are the professionals and the lay practitioners are then it's kind of a follow through from when there was more like the lay community offer necessities for the monastic community to practice, but that's not how our community is set up. And just to kind of give a shout out to wonderful lay Dharma teachers, lay and professional Dharma teachers in our tradition that's also on this call, Karen and Ko Yu Yum. There are good friends from California that are also, they could lead this session too. So it's like, I see that we're guys in our 40s that in a kind of a privileged situation to have a lot of mic time wherever we go. So I think that's also part of practice and community building to empower many people because there's insight all over the place and there's insight in all of us and we all have something to share. For me, that is very clear, whether it's someone that come for their first retreat or someone that is, so it's more for me, is not the form, but is our commitment to practice and to look at things. And also like some transform very easily, some have insight like that, and some go year after year after year in monastic practice and it's like they seem kind of stuck, and there's no clarity. So it's, having lived in that environment too, I don't have any, wrong perception that all monastics are like little saints walking around, and there's beautiful qualities, but I also like in our community, I have so many good friends in the lay community that are just amazing in how they live their lives and how they offer the teaching. So it's like offer space for others to transform. So yeah, keep at it.
Yeah. But I also know or can sort of relate to what you mean, Melvin. One of the things for me has been, if I don't have the credentials, how am I going to share and teach, right? But one of the things that I've come to understand that my credentials are my life, right? And the work that I've done with myself and how I feel with myself right now, right? So like this is something I wasn't planning on sharing, but here it is. When I was 18, I was suicidal. And twice I was about to do it, and twice I was stopped by two amazing human beings. And after that, I recognized that I had to do a lot of inner work. Even though I've been on a spiritual path since I was a kid, it was still really hard. There was still a lot of things that were going on. So I did therapy and I doubled up on my personal practice. And today I'm just a happy person and I live most of my life in peace. Right? And for me, being able to transform, seeing my own transformation from being suicidal 20 some years ago to where I am today, and the peace and tranquility that I live my life with, and it's just, that's what I share. Like I don't share the Buddha's teachings, right? I have studied a little bit about it. I'm not a monk. I don't even call myself a Buddhist. I am very affiliated with the Buddhist teachings and the Buddhist philosophy, but I share about my life. right? And that's what I do. And I share about what's worked for me and what I've understood and what has helped me transform. Um, and if it serves you because it's coming from my heart, that's beautiful. And if it doesn't, then there's another path for you, and that's fine. Right? So yeah, so just do your work and then share your personal journey, right? That's that's enough. We're good enough. All right, so I'm going to ask you two more questions, uh, and then we'll let everyone go because we're coming up on 2 hours, and we didn't talk about time, right? So I don't know how you're doing on time because it's what is it? It's almost 7 there in Sweden.
Yeah, I'm okay until 7. That's great.
All right, great. So, what's been a transformational experience on your spiritual path? Well, the most transformational experience of this one.
In the notes you sent me, I think it even said the greatest. I think, okay, this is a trick question.
Oh, okay.
No,
It may have said that, yes.
no, because I feel like the small little transformative moments is adding up to the big one. So like, we're the community of interbeing. So the small and gradual insights, it coexist with the sudden and the big awakenings and the big transformations. Yeah, but actually, I think it pertains to this question too of accepting ourselves as we are. Is the first shining light process I went through as a novice. We've been about 10 novice brothers living at this newly started hamlet in Plum Village. We're about 20 total, and the 10 novice brothers, we had to practice after a year. We call it shining light, meaning where we give each other feedback. Basically, we share with each other the thing that we appreciate, that we see the good qualities, and we also share about the unskillfulnesses, the habit energies that we see in each other. And we also suggest practical ways to continue our path of transformation. And we're a group of, it was very real sharing and very like honest and open and all out, So in a way, we gave each other a lot of positive, because we lived very tightly. It was very small quarters during that year we spent together. So there was no avoiding like seeing each other for like the whole person you are. You couldn't just portray a certain part of yourself, but we could kind of see everything. And so for me, it's like going through that and hearing these brothers sharing with me, and hearing them sharing, and what I sensed at that time, seeing all my shortcomings and all like my habit energies and so on, and still like day to day, like relating to me with a lot of care, a lot of happiness, and like living a life together. Basically, for me, that was like this, okay, I am good enough. Like I don't have to transform and then I'll be worthy of their friendship, of their brotherhood. So to do that with a group of like, we were all mostly in our 30s at that time, a couple in the 20s maybe. To do that with a group of guys like that was amazing. That was really transforming experience, and one of the wonders of living in community too, I think. And there's these certain points of like just receiving the lamp from Thay in 2010, just that whole process of preparing. Then before you receive the lamp, you prepare an insight gata to present your insight to our teacher and ancestral teachers. And like the whole community is there in ceremonial robes. So it's like a lot of energy and concentration. And mostly there's venerables from other centers around too, to kind of give extra spiritual support during all those ceremonies. And so as I was coming up, and you sit then on your knees facing your teacher, they're sitting on a podium, and you exchange verses. So I would offer my verse, and I would receive it and offer the verse that he wrote. as an encouragement, as a direction on the path, and share a little bit about it and so on. And that was also like such a moment of trust and like transmission. It wasn't just these words on a piece of paper that got exchanged, but it was also a deep connection between teacher and student. And I felt like, yeah, my life and my practice changed quite dramatically after that in terms of confidence and energy. And like, it felt like a little bit of turbo engine had been installed somehow, in my practice. So that is like, maybe two moments particular to kind of point out, and I can name a bunch of them. And, but yeah, and it has been possible because I keep showing up. Some teachers of the past, they say, just keep showing up. How do I transform? How do I awaken? It's like, you just keep showing up. And that is really good. Then we can show up in a mechanical and form-filled way without content, and then we won't transform anyway. But we do have to keep showing up, even if our content is good. You have to keep showing up. So I think that is like the day-to-day nitty-gritty truth about the moments, big moments of transformation. They don't just happen by themselves, but they're like backed up of all these actions, all these choices, not to stay in bed, but to actually get up and go to sitting at 5:45, like day after day after day. So.
Nice. Wow. Yeah, I should have gone first. Yeah, well, mine's a bit different. But yeah, for me, it was 9 years ago. I was, story's pretty simple. I never wanted to go, I've never wanted to go to India for some reason. It just doesn't, it's never called me. But 9 years ago, I started getting the sensations like India coming to my head. I'm like, oh, I don't want to go there, but all right, I'm going to look it up. So I came to Google and I Googled India. And then this beautiful pictures of mountains come up, mountains and a lake. And I'm like, wow, that's where I want to go. That's exactly where I need to be. And I open the picture up and I look it up, and it says Tibet. I'm like, oh, so I'm not going to India. I'm going to Tibet. And I prepared my trip, and I went there on my own. And it was the most amazing experience I've ever had. Because getting to see Tibet and getting to know Tibetans and the people, who they are as people, right? Their heart, their soft, open heart, the way they live, the way they smiled. I went to in winter, so it's a time where the nomads come into the cities to do their pilgrimages to the temples. So I got to see like the real Tibetans that still live in the mountains and are nomads. It was just transformational, because what I saw in them and in the culture and the way they are was the world that I wanted to help build, right? Just people helping each other out, being soft, compassionate, seeing their traditions. They wake up every morning, and before they go to work, they just go and do rounds around the city, praying like they do in mantras around the city. So they have circuits around each city. I didn't know that. I experienced it. I learned it there. So I woke up one morning and the whole city was, Lhasa, the capital, was covered with smoke, but it smelled good. And so I asked someone, it's like, what's going on? It's like, oh, yeah, this is what we do every morning. And we get up in the morning and we go to our circuits, praying around the city so that we can raise the vibration of the city and send those vibrations to the whole world. And we burn incense. So the whole city smells like incense. And they do this every morning. And there's 3 circuits in big cities. The smaller one, which is around the temples or the sacred area. Then the middle one, which is around the center of the city. And then the larger one, which is around the whole city. And what they do is they do the rounds depending on how much time they have. So if they have little time, they'll do the circuit around the center of the city. But if they have more time, then they'll do the larger one. And everyone does this. And I was like, whoa, this is the life I want to live. And that's the world I want to create. Where we're taking care of each other and we're being compassionate to each other. And we just live with an open heart. And that was the most transformational experience I've ever had. Right? So yeah, that was mine. And it still means a lot to me, right? I still long for going back. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So, finishing up, what's one thing that would have radically transformed your life if you would have known it 25 years ago?
I did think about this, and I had to kind of reflect and subtract, and I kept pulling 25 years. I was like, really? Like, I was already 23, 25 years ago. Help to put in the context in where I was. Sometimes when we ordain, it's like part of us gets stuck in the age we ordain at. So part of me still think I'm 30, but I'm not. I am and I'm not. So 25 years ago, maybe, so actually around 25 years ago, I was in my longest relationship. We were together 2 years during university. And on our first date that I had invited her for dinner in my apartment that I shared with a good friend. I was cooking dinner, and just like at the time she came, she said, "Oh, I forget to say that I'm a vegetarian." And at that time, I was like the biggest meat eater in the group of my friends. So it's like, oops. But I also like cooking and like growing up with parents in the restaurant business. So like I whipped up like a vegetarian dish too to go with the potato and the gravy that I already prepared, which also impressed a lot that I could do that, just kind of like add things last minute. But so what I would have done differently from knowing what I'm knowing is that I wouldn't have influenced her and start eating meat again, but I would have gone the other way. I've stopped eating meat and becoming a vegetarian much earlier than I otherwise did. So that would be like one very concrete thing at the age of 23. And I also, another like important moment, I think I got it was another 8 years earlier or something when I was a teenager, and it was every year we would meet a childhood friend of my dad's, and at this one occasion in the springtime, I'd been with my cousin on a golfing trip to Mallorca. I was 16, he was 18 or something. And it wasn't just golfing, but it was a lot of drinking and partying too. That was very new to me. And I was like completely lost, but I kind of wanting to follow my older cousin. So what this friend asked, "Oh, you've been to Mallorca?" It's like, so you drink then? Or like, you go partying? It's like, and I was too kind of ashamed for it. And I kind of hadn't said anything to my parents either. So I was like, I didn't tell him the whole story, but I felt like this was this open hand of a caring, of a joyful, like, uncle that would have been great to have around during my teen years and adolescence as a kind of a support, to offer another kind of support that maybe my parents and other people around me could offer. So I think that would be also that sense of the need of community, and to grab hands that are being reached out to help you and just kind of check in with you. I think that was also like one memory that came very clear to me.
Nice. That's great. Huh. Yeah, for me, I was 18. I was at that moment I was undergoing one of the biggest transformations I've ever had. I was suicidal at that time, like I said before. And one thing that I would have known that really transformed my life, it's like, life's not that serious, right? It's like just be more loving to yourself. That's what I would tell myself, and be less afraid. I was terrified of being seen. I was undergoing that transformation of starting to be seen, or allowing myself to be seen, to open up to others. And I'm still in that process. Like it's been a journey. But yeah, just I would have loved to not take myself that seriously, right? And just have a lighter heart, and be able to enjoy more, just life, right? Instead of being that hard on myself, because I was really hard on myself. Um, so yeah, so that's one of the things that actually that led me into that position where I was suffering that much. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's been good. Thank you. Thank you, brother, and thank you everyone for being part of this. We have a couple minutes. Does anyone have any question, any final question for Brother Phap or for myself? Or any final words that you want to say? Thank you so much for holding space, this beautiful space, for opening up to us.
I just have something I'd like to share.
Yes.
This is Karen in California. I have a painting that our brother Phap Ho did, and I just would like to show it here to everybody. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. So great. I did not know you were an artist.
It says Buddha, Sangha, Dharma, and it looks like the jewels there that are radiating light. So I put in a little frame, and I was just thinking I'd like to show Thay that I have that painting here in my little shed where I meditate.
Beautiful. That's so beautiful. Wow, I did not know you were an artist. We're going to have to do another one where you show your art.
Here you have a little bit. It's my little corner here with some on the walls. I like calligraphy. That's actually a source of fun for me to do calligraphy, but also combine it with some shapes and colors. So
yeah, that's beautiful. So someone's Malin's asking if is there going to be a part 2?
Good idea.
Sure, we can always do another part. That's great. I love sharing with you. It's been an amazing couple years of connecting and sharing and friendship. Because right now I see you as a friend, as a brother in the path. So thank you for opening up, and just sharing with me, because it's been an amazing journey for the last couple of years, and I'm sure there's still a lot more for us to move forward to and share. Thank you. All right, so
thank you so much for making this happen, and for we're just getting started. So session 2 will be easy.
Yeah.
If there's input on questions and format for it too, share that with either one of us that you have contacts with, and continue.
Everyone's gonna get an email with the recording and just a thank you note. If you have questions for a follow-up, then just send them there. Just reply to the email and say, hey, we would like for you to talk about this or that, and we can structure another one. It's really simple, right? So yeah, we'll do that. And then thank you everyone for showing up. Thank you, Jeremy and Andres, because if it wasn't for them, this would have been a huge mess, because on my hands it was not going to happen that easy. So Jeremy and Andres made this happen. They're back on the technical side. And yeah, thank you very much for showing up and for your beautiful energy. And thank you, Brother Phap, for opening up and sharing this time. So sending you everyone a big hug, filled with blessings and light for your path. And we'll be in touch. Have a beautiful weekend.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Pleasure. Bye. I don't want to. I don't want to just kick everyone out of the room, so I'm waiting for you to leave. I don't want to be rude. And it's like, yeah, I'm closing the door. Bye.
Hello, Sister and Mommy.
Good to see you, Thay. Happy to see you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.